The town of Riverside, Ohio, was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked at night and children rode their bikes without fear. With a population of just under 20,000, it was quiet, safe, and predictable, or at least it seemed that way. Detective Michael Carter, a seasoned cop in his early 40s, had grown tired of small town cases. Most of his work involved petty thefts, bar fights, and the occasional domestic dispute. But on a chilly November evening, his routine world was about to shatter. At exactly 8:47 p.m., the Riverside Police Department received a frantic 911 call. A woman screamed into the phone, "Please, someone's in my house. I think they killed him. There's blood everywhere." The call was cut short. Michael and his partner, Detective Sarah Lopez, were dispatched immediately. When they arrived at the scene, a two-story colonial-style home on Maplewood Street, they found the front door ajar. Inside, the living room was a mess. Overturned furniture, shattered glass, and on the floor, a man in his 50s lay in a pool of blood. His throat had been slit. The woman who had called, Emily Harris, was nowhere to be found. Michael crouched beside the body, his jaw tightening. "This isn't just a break-in," he muttered. "This is personal." Sarah scanned the room, but where's the wife? Kidnapped or involved? Michael didn't answer. He had learned long ago that in small towns, appearances were deceiving, and in Riverside, secrets were about to spill like blood on the floor. Detective Michael Carter stood in the dimly lit living room, his eyes fixed on the lifeless body sprawled across the floor. The victim's name was soon confirmed as David Harris, a local accountant who had lived in Riverside for more than 20 years. A quiet man with no criminal record, David was known for his punctuality and reserved nature. But tonight his life had ended violently. Michael's partner, Detective Sarah Lopez, crouched near the body, carefully examining the scene. Clean cut across the throat, sharp blade. Whoever did this wasn't panicking. They knew what they were doing. Michael nodded grimly. "And they wanted us to see it. This isn't random." The absence of David's wife, Emily Harris, was even more troubling. Her car was still parked outside, her purse left behind on the dining table. It looked as though she had simply vanished. "Either she's the next victim," Sarah said, "or she's the reason this happened." Michael glanced around the room. On the coffee table lay a glass of red wine, still half full, next to another glass that had been knocked over, staining the rug. Two people had been drinking here before the struggle began. Sarah pointed toward the hallway, blood trail. It leads toward the back door. They followed it outside, where muddy footprints cut across the yard and disappeared into the darkness of the woods beyond. Michael called over the forensic team. "Get casts of those prints. Size looks like a man's, but don't rule anything out yet." As officers secured the perimeter, Michael spotted a framed family photo on the mantel. David and Emily stood side by side, smiling stiffly, their arms loosely around each other. It didn't look like a picture of love. It looked like a picture of duty. Michael frowned. "I want a full background check on Emily Harris. Friends, co-workers, social media, everything. If she's missing, we find her. If she's hiding, we smoke her out." At the station, Michael sat across from the Harris neighbor, Karen Mitchell, who had been the one to report hearing screams. "I saw someone," Karen whispered nervously, right before the police arrived. A tall figure wearing dark clothes running toward the woods. "I couldn't see the face, but I don't think it was Emily." Michael leaned forward. "Why not?" Karen hesitated. "Because I know Emily. She's small, petite. This person was bigger, broad shoulders, definitely a man. That detail changed everything." Sarah entered the interrogation room with a folder in hand. "Got something on David Harris. Turns out he wasn't as squeaky clean as everyone thought. A few weeks ago, he withdrew nearly $50,000 in cash from his account. No one knows why, and it's gone." Michael exhaled slowly, feeling the pieces shift. A dead accountant, a missing wife, a large sum of money, and a mysterious man fleeing into the woods. He stood, his voice firm. David Harris was living a double life, and if we don't find Emily soon, she might end up just like him. Detective Michael Carter's office was silent except for the soft hum of the fluorescent light above. Files on the Harris case lay scattered across his desk. Crime scene photos, bank statements, and a list of names he had started to circle. Emily Harris was at the top of that list. Sarah walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee, placing one in front of him. "You've been staring at those files for hours, Mike. Get some caffeine in you before you pass out." Michael gave a faint smile, then tapped a photo of Emily. "She's either the victim of an abduction or she's smarter than we think. Either way, she's the key." That morning, they visited Riverside General Hospital to speak with Dr. Rachel Green, Emily's close friend. The doctor confirmed that Emily had been stressed lately, even confiding that her marriage to David was falling apart. "Emily told me she thought David was hiding something," Dr. Green explained. "Money was disappearing from their accounts. She suspected he was involved with people he shouldn't be." Michael leaned in. "Did she ever mention names?" Dr. Green shook her head. "No, but she was scared. She said if anything ever happened to her, we should look into David's clients. He handled finances for some shady people. That was the first real lead." Back at the station, Sarah dug into David's client list. One name jumped out: Vincent Russo, a local businessman with rumored ties to organized crime. Michael rubbed his chin. If David was laundering money for Russo and decided to skim some off the top, that 50 grand makes sense. Russo's men wouldn't let that slide. Sarah frowned. "So what about Emily? Kidnapped as leverage, or maybe she ran to save herself?" Before Michael could answer, his phone buzzed. A patrol unit had found something near the woods behind the Harris house. They arrived at the scene, flashlights cutting through the thick brush. A uniformed officer led them to a patch of disturbed ground. Buried halfway in the dirt was a blood-stained scarf. Michael picked it up carefully. It matched the scarf Emily was wearing in the family photo from the Harris home. Sarah's face hardened. "If this is Emily's, we may already be too late." Michael shook his head. "No, there's not enough blood here for a fatal wound. This was staged, or she's injured but alive. Either way, someone wants us to think she's gone." As they turned back toward the vehicles, a figure stepped out from behind the trees. A tall man, broad-shouldered, with a hood pulled low over his face. "Police, hands where I can see them," Michael shouted, drawing his gun. The man bolted. Sarah and Michael gave chase through the woods, branches whipping against their faces. The suspect was fast, but just before he disappeared into the darkness, Michael caught a glimpse of something glinting in his hand. A hunting knife. They lost him near the riverbank, his footprints vanishing into the mud. Michael's chest heaved with frustration. "That's our guy. He killed David, and he has Emily." Sarah looked back at the scarf, her voice quiet but firm. "Or maybe Emily isn't a victim at all. Maybe she's running with him." Michael's gut twisted. The lines between victim and suspect were blurring fast. The night air in Riverside felt heavier than usual, as if the entire town was holding its breath. Detective Michael Carter stood at the riverbank, scanning the darkness where the hooded man had vanished. His pulse was still racing from the chase, but his mind was sharper than ever. "That wasn't random," Michael muttered. "He wanted us to see him." Sarah adjusted her jacket against the cold. "You think he's sending a message?" Michael nodded slowly. "Or a warning." Forensics confirmed that the scarf found in the woods belonged to Emily Harris. Her DNA matched the traces of blood on it, but the blood pattern suggested a shallow cut, not a fatal wound. "She's alive," Michael said firmly, tossing the report onto his desk. "Whoever took her wants to keep her breathing, for now." Sarah crossed her arms, or she cut herself to make it look like she'd been taken. What if she's part of this? Maybe the hooded man is her accomplice. Michael frowned. Then why kill David in such a brutal way? If Emily wanted out, divorce would have been easier. Unless David found out about something he wasn't supposed to know, Sarah countered. The more they talked, the more tangled the web became. The next morning, they paid a visit to Vincent Russo, the businessman with mob connections. Russo's office was slick, mahogany desks, expensive suits, men with cold eyes standing guard. Russo welcomed them with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Detectives, what a surprise. To what do I owe the honor? Michael didn't waste time. David Harris, he worked for you. He's dead. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Russo chuckled, leaning back in his leather chair. "Tragic news. David was good with numbers, but let's be clear. I don't kill accountants. Bad for business." Sarah shot him a cold glare. "He took $50,000 from his accounts. You expect us to believe you're not furious about that?" Russo's smile faded, his tone hardening. "If David stole from me, he paid the price, but I didn't have to lift a finger. Men like him make enemies on their own." Michael studied him carefully. Russo was lying, or at least hiding something, but without evidence they couldn't touch him. That night, as Michael reviewed case notes at his apartment, his phone buzzed. An anonymous text message appeared on his screen. "If you want to find Emily Harris, stop looking at Russo. Look closer to home." Attached was a blurry photo. Emily, alive, sitting in what looked like a dark basement. Her wrists were tied, but her eyes stared directly at the camera, wide with fear. Michael's grip tightened on the phone. Someone was playing a dangerous game. He forwarded the message to Sarah, who called immediately. "This isn't Russo's style. He doesn't play games like this." Michael agreed, which means we're dealing with someone else, someone closer, someone who wants us chasing shadows while they hold the real power. The following morning, Michael received another surprise. The coroner's report revealed something shocking about David Harris, traces of tranquilizers in his bloodstream. He hadn't just been killed, he'd been drugged first. Whoever did this planned it carefully, Sarah said. They wanted him weak before they struck. Michael stared at the report, the words burning into his mind. A carefully staged murder, a missing wife, and a mysterious accomplice. He looked at Sarah. This wasn't just a crime of passion. This was a setup, and Emily Harris might not be the victim we think she is. Detective Michael Carter hardly slept after receiving the photo of Emily Harris. The image of her tied to a chair in some shadowy basement replayed in his mind again and again. Whoever sent that message wanted him involved on a personal level, and that made him uneasy. At sunrise, he met Sarah at the precinct. She was already analyzing the blurry picture. "Notice the pipes in the background," she said, zooming in. "That's old infrastructure. Cast iron, maybe from the 1960s. Not many basements in Riverside look like that anymore." Michael nodded, which means it's either an abandoned property or one of the older houses in town. Sarah pulled up city records on her laptop. Only 15 houses in Riverside still use those old pipe systems. We can start there. Before checking the list, Michael returned to the Harris residence. Something about the crime scene still gnawed at him. Inside, the forensic team had cleared out, but the smell of dried blood lingered. Michael searched David's office, sifting through drawers and cabinets. Tucked inside a hollow, outlaw book, he found an envelope stuffed with receipts. Cash withdrawals, travel tickets, one stood out, a bus ticket purchased for Emily, dated 2 days before David's death. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Looks like she was planning to leave him. Michael's stomach churned. But she didn't get on that bus. Something stopped her, or someone. Later that afternoon, they investigated the first property with old infrastructure. It was an abandoned home on the edge of town, boarded up windows and graffiti on the walls. Inside, the stench of mold and decay hit them immediately. They swept the house, flashlights cutting through the dark, but found nothing, until Sarah spotted something scratched into a wall near the basement stairs. 3 letters, E.H. Michael's pulse quickened. Emily Harris, she's been here. They descended the basement steps cautiously. The air was damp, and water dripped from rusted pipes. In the center of the floor was an old wooden chair with frayed ropes tied around it. Recently used, recently abandoned. She was here, Sarah whispered, but they moved her. Michael clenched his fists, and they're taunting us. Back at the precinct, Michael's phone buzzed again. Another anonymous text, "You're getting warmer, but if you really want to save her, stop trusting the people closest to you." This time, there was no photo, just the warning. Sarah read the message over his shoulder, her face tense. "Closest to you, what does that mean? Your family, the department, or..." She trailed off. Michael stared at her, "Or you." The room went silent. Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. "Don't start that. You think I'd go through all this to frame you, to kill David Harris? That's insane." Michael exhaled slowly. "I don't know what to think anymore, but someone wants us to turn on each other." Before they could argue further, Officer Daniels rushed in holding a folder. "Detectives, you need to see this. Surveillance footage from a gas station near Maplewood Street." Michael flipped it open. The grainy footage showed a black SUV parked outside the station at 8:30 p.m., just minutes before the 911 call from Emily. The driver stepped out tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a hoodie. And then Emily Harris stepped out too. She wasn't tied up. She wasn't being dragged. She walked beside him willingly. Michael felt the ground shift beneath him. She wasn't kidnapped. He whispered, "She's working with him." Sarah's voice was low, almost trembling. "Then the real question is, why do they want David dead?" A detective, Michael Carter, stared at the surveillance footage in disbelief. Emily Harris, unposed victim, grieving wife, wasn't a captive. She was walking freely beside the hooded man. Sarah crossed her arms tightly, her voice edged with anger. "So all this time, she's been playing us. The scarf, the photo, all staged." Michael's jaw tightened. "The question is, what role did she play in David's death? Did she lure him into the trap, or did she just help cover it up?" Back at the precinct, Michael and Sarah requested Emily Harris's phone records, financial history, and emails. What they uncovered painted a far different picture of the woman the town thought they knew. Multiple calls to an unlisted number traced to a burner phone. Large cash deposits into a hidden account under her maiden name, Emily Price. And most damning of all, travel records showing she had been to New York City twice in the last month, meeting locations linked to Vincent Russo's network. Sarah shook her head. She wasn't afraid of Russo. She was working with him. Michael frowned, or against him. If David was skimming from Russo, maybe Emily partnered with someone else to take it all. That would explain the 50 grand. Forensics from the abandoned house finally gave them another clue. A partial fingerprint lifted from the chair rope matched a known offender, Jack Nolan, a former enforcer for Russo's crew. Michael remembered the name. Nolan had disappeared years ago after turning on Russo in a botched deal. Rumor was he'd gone underground. Sarah leaned back in her chair. So Emily teams up with Russo's old enemy to take down her husband. That's one hell of a dangerous game. Michael added quietly, and one that got David killed. That evening, Michael decided to retrace Emily's steps. He drove to a roadside motel just outside of Riverside where Emily's hidden credit card had been used a week ago. The motel clerk, a tired-looking man in his 60s, remembered her right away. Yeah, she stayed here with a guy. Tall, wore a hoodie most of the time, paid cash. They kept to themselves, but I could tell. They weren't hiding from each other. They were close. Michael pressed. Did they say where they were headed? The clerk thought for a moment. She asked about old farm properties near the river. Said she was looking for something private. Michael and Sarah narrowed it down to a derelict farmhouse along the riverbank, one of the few places still untouched since the 1970s. It matched the background of Emily's photo. Before they could assemble a full team, Michael received yet another text. "Stop bringing cops. Come alone if you want her alive. Midnight, the farmhouse by the river." Sarah read the message over his shoulder, her eyes flashing. "It's a trap. They know you're leading this investigation. They want you isolated." Michael's gut twisted. "If I don't go, Emily dies. If I do, I might not come back." Sarah grabbed his arm. "Then we're going together. If they want to play games, we'll play smarter." Near midnight, Michael parked half a mile from the farmhouse. The moon cast an eerie glow over the broken roof and sagging porch. He and Sarah moved silently through the trees until they had a clear view of the basement window. Inside, through a crack in the boards, they saw Emily Harris, alive, untied, talking to Jack Nolan. Her voice carried faintly through the still night. "We're so close, Jack. Once the cops stop sniffing around, we'll have the money and we'll be gone." Michael's blood ran cold. "She wasn't a victim. She was the mastermind," he whispered to Sarah. "She set up her husband, and now she's planning her escape." Sarah's hand tightened around her gun. "Not if we stop her tonight." The farmhouse loomed like a ghost against the pale moonlight. Broken shutters rattled in the wind, and the long grass whispered around the detectives as they crept closer. Inside, Emily Harris's voice carried through the rotting boards, calm and confident, like a woman who had everything under control. Michael and Sarah crouched near the basement window, listening intently. Jack Nolan's gravelly voice responded, "You did well, Emily. David never saw it coming, but killing a man in his own living room, that was risky." Emily's laugh was soft, almost chilling. "He was weak. He thought he could keep secrets from me. Now his money is ours. And by the time the cops figure it out, we'll be long gone." Michael's pulse quickened. Every word confirmed it. Emily wasn't a hostage. She was the architect of the entire crime. Michael motioned to Sarah. They circled toward the back door of the farmhouse. The wood was soft with rot. One hard shove, and it gave way with a muffled crack. They descended the narrow steps into the basement. Dust floated in the air, illuminated by the weak glow of a single hanging bulb. Emily and Jack froze when they saw them. "Well, well," Emily said smoothly, standing from her chair. Her wrists were free, her posture bold. "Detective Carter, you just don't know when to quit, do you?" Michael raised his gun. "It's over, Emily. Step away from him." Jack chuckled, pulling a knife from his belt. "You really think you're walking out of here alive?" Emily's eyes locked on Michael's. "You want the truth. David was stealing from Russo. I found out, and I knew Russo would kill us both if he learned, so I made a choice. I turned to Jack. Together, we took the money before Russo could. David was already doomed. Detective, I just sped up the process." Sarah's voice was sharp. "You killed your own husband for money." Emily shrugged. "For survival. Do you know what happens to women who get caught in Russo's web? I refused to be one of them." Michael's grip on his gun tightened. "Survival doesn't excuse murder." Jack stepped forward, knife gleaming under the dim light. "We walk out of here together, detective, or blood gets spilled." Michael and Sarah raised their weapons. The basement felt smaller, suffocating, as the four of them stood locked in a deadly standoff. Emily smirked, her voice low and taunting. "You won't shoot me, Michael. You've been chasing a ghost of a victim. Deep down, you wanted to save me, didn't you?" Her words cut deeper than Michael expected. She was right. Some part of him had wanted to believe she was innocent. Jack moved suddenly, lunging forward with the knife. 2 shots rang out. Jack staggered, dropping the blade before collapsing to the floor. Emily screamed, not in grief but in rage. "You idiot, he was my only chance out." She darted toward the far side of the basement, grabbing a pistol hidden beneath a crate. Before Michael could react, she aimed it straight at Sarah. "Drop your weapons or she dies." Michael's chest tightened. He aimed squarely at Emily, his voice steady but firm. "Don't do this, Emily. You've already destroyed your life. Don't take hers too." Emily's hands trembled, but her eyes were wild. "I'm not going to prison. I'll shoot her, and I'll shoot you if I have to." The basement hung heavy with silence, every breath, every heartbeat magnified. Sarah whispered, "Michael, don't let her win." Michael's finger hovered on the trigger, caught between justice and the split-second decision that could end it all. The basement was silent except for the ragged breathing of 4 people caught in a deadly standoff, though one of them, Jack Nolan, now lay bleeding out on the floor. His body twitched once, then stilled. Emily Harris's pistol remained locked on Sarah, her hands shaking but her eyes burning with defiance. "You don't understand," she hissed. "If I go down for this, Russo will have me killed before I ever make it to trial. The system won't protect me. This is the only way out." Michael's aim stayed steady. "Emily, you had choices. You could have come to us. Instead, you planned your husband's murder and tried to play us all. Don't make it worse than it already is." "Sarah," standing frozen with Emily's gun aimed at her chest, spoke quietly. "You're not walking out of here, Emily. Not with money, not with freedom. The only choice you have left is how this ends." Emily's voice cracked as she tried to justify herself. "David wasn't innocent. He was in deep with Russo, and he was dragging me with him. I begged him to stop, but he wouldn't. He cared more about money than me, so I made my own plan." Her hands tightened around the gun. "Jack and I were going to disappear. The money, the new IDs, everything was ready, and then you showed up and ruined it all." Michael stepped forward slightly, his voice calm, deliberate. "Emily, listen to yourself. You traded one prison for another. Do you really think you can outrun this forever?" Her eyes glistened with tears, but her finger stayed firm on the trigger. For 1/10 second, it looked like Emily might lower her weapon. But then her face hardened, her decision made. She turned the gun toward Michael. A deafening shot echoed through the basement. Emily staggered backward, her pistol clattering to the floor. A crimson bloom spread across her shoulder. Sarah lowered her weapon, smoke still curling from the barrel. Michael exhaled, his arms shaking slightly. "You didn't kill her." Sarah's voice was steady. "I wasn't aiming to." Emily collapsed against the wall, clutching her wound. Tears streamed down her face, not from pain, but from the realization that her carefully constructed world had crumbled. "You don't get it," she sobbed. "Russo will come after me now. He'll never stop." Michael holstered his weapon and stepped closer. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you partnered with his enemy. You weren't saving yourself, Emily. You were signing your own death warrant." Sirens wailed in the distance as backup units finally arrived. Officers stormed the farmhouse, cuffing Emily as paramedics tended to her wound. As she was led past Michael, she whispered bitterly, "You think you won, detective. Russo won't stop with me. You've just painted a target on your own back." Hours later, as the farmhouse emptied out and evidence bags piled up, Michael and Sarah stood outside beneath the pale dawn light. Sarah rubbed her temples. "We got her, but she's right. Russo won't take this lightly. Emily was his pawn, and now the board's been flipped." Michael gazed toward the horizon, exhaustion etched on his face. This case isn't over. David's death was just the beginning. Russo's going to want payback, and he'll come after anyone who got in his way. Sarah's eyes met his. "Which means us." Michael nodded grimly. The war with Russo had just begun. The Riverside Police Department buzzed with restless energy the morning after Emily Harris's arrest. Reporters crowded outside, shouting questions, their cameras flashing. The story of a wife conspiring to kill her husband with a mob enforcer was too sensational to ignore. Detective Michael Carter ignored them as he entered the building. He had bigger problems. Emily's last words echoed in his mind. "Russo won't stop with me. You've just painted a target on your own back." In the interrogation room, Emily sat pale and weary, her arm in a sling from the gunshot wound. Her composure from the farmhouse was gone, replaced by nervous glances at the corners of the room. Michael sat across from her. "Emily, Russo isn't happy. You worked with his enemy and killed his accountant. That makes you a liability. If you want to live, you need to talk." Emily hesitated, then leaned forward, her voice trembling. "Russo already knows. He has people everywhere. Jack and I were supposed to steal the money and disappear, but Russo caught wind of it. David wasn't killed because he stole. He was killed because Russo wanted to send a message to me." Michael's eyes narrowed. "So Russo let you think you were outsmarting him?" Emily nodded slowly. "He wanted me desperate. He wanted me running, and now he'll come for all of us." Just then, Sarah burst into the room, her face tense. "Mike, we've got a situation. A call came in. An explosion at the Riverside courthouse." Michael's stomach dropped. "Russo." The detectives raced to the scene. Smoke billowed from the courthouse steps. Glass shattered across the street. Miraculously, no one had been killed, but the message was clear. Russo was striking back, and he didn't care who got caught in the crossfire. Among the debris, officers found a note taped to a piece of twisted metal. In bold letters it read, "You take one of mine, I take one of yours. Back off, or next time it won't just be a warning." That night, Michael drove home with a constant sense of being watched. His instincts were rarely wrong. When he pulled into his driveway, he noticed the faint reflection of headlights down the street. Someone sitting in a parked car, engine off. He didn't go inside. Instead, he called Sarah. "They're watching me. Russo's men." Sarah's voice was firm. "Then we hit back. We've played defense long enough. If Russo wants a war, we give him one. But on our terms." Michael agreed, but unease weighed heavily on him. Russo wasn't some street thug. He had deep connections, money, and loyal soldiers. Taking him down wouldn't be easy. Back at the precinct, the detectives put together a task force. Wiretaps, undercover agents, financial tracking. They needed every angle to bring Russo down. As the briefing ended, Michael glanced at the evidence board. Emily's photo stared back at him, her cold smile frozen in time. She thought she was clever. He muttered, but in the end, she was just bait in Russo's game. Sarah stepped beside him, and now we're the ones in his sights. Michael clenched his fists. "Then, we finish this before he finishes us." Late that night, as Michael left the station, a black SUV rolled past slowly. For a brief second, through the tinted window, he saw a familiar face. Vincent Russo himself. The mob boss raised a glass in mock salute, his smirk visible even through the dark. The SUV vanished into the night, leaving Michael with a chilling certainty. Russo wasn't hiding. He was letting them know the real battle was about to begin. The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on the man in the defendant's chair. Richard Hale, the once untouchable mastermind behind a web of corruption and bloodshed, now sat broken, his arrogance replaced with a hollow stare. The evidence had piled up against him. Financial records, eyewitness testimonies, and the damning confession of his closest ally. Detective Ryan Carter sat in the gallery, his hands clenched tightly together. Months of chasing shadows, sleepless nights, and close calls had led to this moment. He had lost friends, faced betrayal, and nearly sacrificed his own life, but now justice was within reach. The prosecutor's voice cut through the silence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is not just about one man's crimes. It's about the lives destroyed, the fear spread across this city, and the thin line between power and justice. Today, we ask you to deliver a verdict that will echo beyond this courtroom." Ryan's heart pounded. He could almost hear the whispers of those who had fallen to Hale's empire. Innocent families, silenced witnesses, officers who had given their lives. This was for them. The jury filed out, leaving the room heavy with anticipation. Minutes dragged like hours until finally they returned. The foreman's words carried the weight of finality. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all counts." Gasps erupted in the room. Hale's face twisted, his composure shattered for the first time. The judge's gavel struck sharply, sealing his fate with a sentence of life without parole. Outside the courthouse, the city seemed to breathe for the first time in years. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and the crowd cheered. Ryan stepped outside into the sunlight, the burden he had carried slowly lifting from his shoulders, but he knew justice was never perfect. There were always more shadows, more battles waiting. Still, in this moment, he allowed himself a rare smile. The war against corruption was far from over. But for today, justice had prevailed. As he walked away, the echoes of the gavel still ringing in his ears, Ryan whispered to himself, "This isn't the end. It's only the beginning. Thanks for watching."